I think very few of us thought that Gauteng would also face this kind of situation, not because it has never happened before, but the grand scale, if what is being alleged is true, it really shows that there is a big problem that we're facing. And I think for me, what is really worrying is that it's one thing to say, well, we will check, but it's another that the province itself is hiding behind processes waiting for the SIU, when in fact the Premier's office could really be able to find out, firstly, what processes were followed, even though these things were urgent, what really did happen here. And I would argue that the best that they can do is not only to suspend some of these contracts, but to freeze the resources and to ensure that the officials and the politicians involved are also put on suspension, just as Kuselo has herself taken a decision to accept a leave of absence.
So, in your view, you think that the Health MEC should step down, even though he said he has no role in procurement, and you will know how these systems work. I don't think that the political office bearers do have a role in procurement, and he's the one, he says, who asked the SIU, and so you would still ask him to step aside?
Absolutely. I think my view is that the MEC is now becoming the story of corruption instead of becoming the champion on COVID that he is. And I think everybody would agree that he has really been doing a very good job. But I think every time he now goes out, that message of COVID is going to be lost. The focus is going to be what happened in terms of these resources. Same with the Premier. Whenever he takes the podium to speak about COVID, that's really what is going to come out. So even if he does not have to step down, but also just to take a leave of absence, is something I would urge him to do.
Okay, I mean, Dr. Masuku is a doctor, he used to work at Chris Hani Baragwanath. I mean, he's exactly the kind of person you want to be Health MEC in the crisis.
But that's the thing. You see, the problem is not so much that he's guilty, it's not so much that he's not competent, but that I think this whiff that we're talking about, we're not talking small change here, Stephen. We're talking a lot of money. And I think for me, what's so funny, is that today, when everybody should be celebrating that we have finally received this loan from the IMF that we have been asking for, everybody has now accepted as a fact that, look, there are people who are smiling in glee that another 70 billion have arrived and they're just waiting to lay their hands on it. That's not really what we want the government to be remembered for.
I have to ask about health departments, Mr. Shilowa. I mean, especially in Gauteng, crisis after crisis, long before COVID, being taken into administration, always problems. I mean, I accept that there are big patient loads in Gauteng. I accept that people come from other provinces to Gauteng, other countries to Gauteng for treatment. I accept that there's a massive load. And yet there seems to be a sort of long-running problem in the Gauteng Health Department. I mean, what is the cause of that?
Well, I think there are really things that should be separated. I think the whole issue of overcrowding is because I think both national government and province have not accepted that in terms of population, Gauteng is now the #1 with up to close to 15 million people. And that means that whether it's Bara or any of these hospitals, they are always going to be full. The issue is not so much whether they are full or not, it's whether there are enough resources, there are enough personnel to be able to staff them. And I think the issue of there is not enough money is going to wear thin if the resources are always being wasted. That is separate from two incidents that really have marred the province. One is the Esidimeni, and the other is the corruption allegations against Brian Hlongwa, which case the Hawks seem to just taking over 10 years trying to investigate that issue and not coming to a conclusion either way.
I mean, that is incredible. We've had conversations around Brian Hlongwa yesterday. A bigger conversation around this, Mr. Shilowa, around corruption and the rise of corruption in our society. You talk about the IMF and everyone's reaction to it. I've been struck by that as well. I mean, the argument isn't around should we get the money, should we get into debt with the IMF. There seems to just be muttering that it's going to get stolen. I mean, where do we start with trying to remove it from our society? And I mean, there's sort of things that people always propose. They propose that we change our political system and have a constituency-based system. I don't know if that makes a difference. People say, let's change the law. Well, we've changed the law about a dozen times. They say, let's put in capacity, or let's change the head of the NPA. Still no one being charged. Let's change the head of the Hawks. Still no one being charged. What do we do?
I think, Stephen, we must always learn to live with what we have. In 2019, we went to the polls. The ANC asked for a mandate. DA, EFF, and other parties, the ANC received the mandate. President Ramaphosa said the era of impunity is over. We must hold him to that promise. Secondly, we've got to say to the president, it is not possible for him to serve two masters effectively, the people and the ANC. It's clear that the networks for corruption, some of them runs very deep inside his organization. He should try to root that out. He should focus on building the countries. It is still possible for him to rally everyone behind the country, even as they may be skeptical about the ANC. I think if they lose hope in a government that they have elected, then we're in real trouble. So for me, it's not so much what the systems will do, it's what the system have to now given us. That's what we have to work with.